Hey everyone, welcome back to this episode of Brighter Raised. Today we're looking at, we've been looking at this week at Luke 2:7 and the idea that there was no room for Jesus in the inn. And today we're looking at other places that had no room for Jesus. Now we see right away at the very beginning that there was no room for Jesus in the palaces of the day, right? Especially the ones that were nearby. Like you take at the very beginning, like Jesus never spent much time in the palaces, right? You got, one time really. It's kind of like, Pilate's was the closest he got to really kind of a palace, but, or the high priest's place. But anywho, Matthew 2:16 through 17, we see that they didn't want him there. And in fact, Herod, who was the king of the Jews at the time, wanted him dead. And you look at the story, you remember the story of Herod killing the children. It's in Matthew 2:16 starts there. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and all that region who were 2 years old or under, according to that time that he had ascertained from the wise men. So the king of the Jews at the time was like, yeah, let's just kill the guy. Let's kill the kid, and let's kill that child. Get rid of him. So he didn't want anything to do with him. And that was the case all along, that really those who were in power, those who were in the palaces, those who were in places of governance did not want Jesus around. He was causing them problems. He was a threat to their standing. And even the baby Jesus in the manger, and then the child might have been 1 or 2 years old, according to what Herod was doing, killed 2 years old and under. So he thought at least somewhere in there, this child was born between somewhere 2 years old and younger, would have to be dying because he heard about it 2 years ago. And so he wipes them out. And so he didn't want him there. He didn't want him dead. He was afraid of his power, of his throne. So that's the problem there. And then also, Jesus was not really welcome in the marketplace, right? I mean, you have the story of of him overturning the tables in the temple, which is not technically the marketplace, but they had turned his house of prayer into a marketplace, which was wrong, which is what Jesus was calling them out when he flipped the tables. But if you look at Mark 12:38, you see this idea here, that Jesus was not like the other teachers. He would not be welcome as one of these rabbis that were alive at the time. Because it says, and in his teaching he said, beware of the scribes who like to walk around in long robes and like greetings in marketplaces, and have the best seats in the synagogues and the places of honor at feasts, who devour widows' houses and for pretense make long prayers. They will receive the greater condemnation. So Jesus wasn't like that. He wasn't going out getting the greetings in the marketplaces. Oh, here comes Rabbi so-and-so. Here comes Scribe so-and-so. And then, you make a big deal out of it. That wasn't Jesus. Now, people came to the marketplace as he walked through because they were laying out their sick and they're dying and said, hey, heal them. But he was not welcomed by those who were in the marketplace. And we see that his disciples were not either, because when you get later on and when they're overturning the world, things are being thrown upside down. I mean, like Paul's in Ephesus, and he's teaching against he's teaching against Artemis, preaching the Messiah. Those people get angry and they want him gone. They actually want Paul dead, but that didn't happen because God had other plans for him. But you see that idea there, that they weren't messing around. You also see that there was no place for Jesus amongst the educated people. They didn't want him there. The smart people of the world were not accepting of Christ and what he was doing. For example, Matthew 21:15. It says, but when the chief priests and scribes saw the wonderful things that he did, and the children crying out in the temple, Hosanna to the Son of David, they were indignant. Okay, here's the smart people, right? Here is the, those who were educated, the educated people who were the chief priests and scribes. those who were the smart Jewish people of the time, some of his own people, but the smart people in the Jewish culture, the educated, and they're like, do you hear what they're saying? Do you understand what they're talking about? And they got angry at him. They hated him. Of course, Jesus says, well, haven't you ever read? I'm sure they were even more angry. He's like, wait a minute. This guy who grew up in Nazareth in Galilee, there's no one from Galilee. You know, these people are backwoods kind of people. And this supposed rabbi who's not approved by any of the other chief rabbis, he's going to come. He wasn't trained by Gamaliel. This guy is nobody. And he's going to come and tell us. And then you go, what? Have you never read? What? Of course I read that. And so, but they hated him. He didn't help it there, but there you go. They didn't want him. So the educated people didn't, he didn't appeal to their their education. Right? He's not like, didn't you read that? Well, of course they read it. He's saying it kind of tongue in cheek, like, haven't you ever read this? You know your scriptures, right? You so-called smart people. And so you kind of see that kind of zinger there. Here's the people who should know, who have read that. Yes, they've read it before. And it's kind of sarcastic there. Haven't you ever read that? Well, of course I read it. I'm one of the scribes. I'm one of the chief priests, man. Of course I've read that. But there you go. And then you see with the religious people of the day, again, some of the same people. But he didn't find himself amongst the council, the Sanhedrin. Right? They were seeking false testimony against Jesus that they might put him to death. So they were seeking for someone, even someone who would lie. Like, hey, just lie, man. We'll get together some people who will lie about Jesus, and then we'll convict him. We'll put him to death. And so even amongst the religious people, those who were in the Sanhedrin, those who were the council of the Jews, here is the leaders of the religious order of the day in Judaism. And they're like, well, let's hunt him down and kill him. Let's have people in here lie about him so we can, quote unquote, do it right. So there you go. Other places with no room, palaces didn't want him. The marketplace really didn't welcome him. He was hated by the educated, hunted down by religious leaders. No room for him. No room for him in the inn. No room for him amongst most people. So we'll stop there for today. Next time we'll look at the fact that the inn had